20.
I'm going to start with a new band that I discovered last year called War of Ages, and they just put out an album, and I heard some of the music up front from it, and based on just like 5 songs, I picked that album. It's called Alpha, and it's from Face Down Records. I love that War of Ages sprinkles the same old head and heart-pounding rhythm with intricate and metalicious leads, man. The dudes that play lead guitar for this band set it apart from every other metalcore band that there is, and this new album is amazing. It's full of energy. It's full of intensity. The lyrics are varied with intensity, and they just bring it. Every single time they bring it, and it just grabs my attention every time.
I had received your list of your top 20 albums, and I went to look up this album and saw this hadn't been released, and then I reached out to you and was like, have you got the promo copy you can send me to listen to? And you're like, no, I haven't even listened to this album. How on earth could you put an album on your top 20 of 2017 that you hadn't even listened to?
Listen, Dick, here's the thing, man. This is what you don't understand about music. Sometimes it is about loyalty to a band. I love this band, and I'm going to give them the chance to make the list. It's band loyalty. It's something you don't understand.
I think I understand more and more how you come to this list of terrible music when you don't actually listen to the album.
Let me go on to 19 before I get pissed off already.
19.
Number 19 coming in for me is a band that actually started in the 80s. It's a very familiar actor, Ice-T, that is the lead vocals of this band. It's Body Count and Bloodlust from Century Media. And here's the thing. If you ever wanted to know what a rapper singing metal might sound like, here it is. So I find myself listening to this album a lot. I really enjoy it. He speaks a message with his lyrics, and it's basic, driven, hard-driving metal.
18.
Let me ask you this, man. How can me, the 80s metal guy, not love a band that makes their living off parodying bands from the 80s, man? At number 18 is still Panther, Lower the Bar from Opening Music and Cobalt. Listen, I've seen these guys in concert. I've heard all their albums. But I'm telling you, they make good music from the 80s. And it's traditional power / glam / hair metal, and I unashamedly love it.
This band writes terrible music for people who want to laugh at metal. This is music made by people who don't understand anything about metal. They lampoon metal. They're a lame parody with these awful, annoying lyrics, terrible imagery. And the saddest thing is, Brian, you have people shouting metal at these concerts, openly embracing these terrible stereotypes. Steel Panther just makes money off making fun of metalheads. Anyone who listens to Steel Panther is a sellout.
Yeah, you can sell my nuts, big boy. Let me move on to number 17.
17.
Tankard, One Foot in the Grave from Nuclear Blast Records, released back in May. This is a German band that's been around for about 200 years and has added yet another incredible, gut-punching, ear-bleeding, rocks-in-your-windpipe metal-on-metal album. These guys live the life. They don't have to talk about their feelings and present synthesizers to everybody. They drink beer, they party, they play guitars really freaking loud, and there's nothing you can do about it. This is metal at its finest.
We're 4 bands into your list, Brian. We finally have a band that I think is actually metal. I don't think Tankard is very compelling metal, but I'll give you a point. You finally have an actual metal band, so kudos to you.
As usual, you're wrong, but let me move on.
16.
The band Make Them Suffer with their album Worlds Apart, released back in July off Rise Records. Listen, here's what I might grudgingly call my most ho-hum album on my list, except for one thing. I listen to this shit all the time. It's part of my work playlist. At times it's soothing. At times it's ass-kicking. It's just a great all-around metalcore album.
15.
Moving up the ladder here, coming in at number 15, is the incomparable Iced Earth with their newest album, Incorruptable, from Century Media that they released back in June. Stu Block may be the best metal vocalist going today. John Schaefer and the boys are excellent musicians and writers, but it was just a little too slow and plotty to put in the top 10. That said, this album is incredible. It's not a theme album, but it tells a story. It has a certain feel to it.
14.
Battle Beast, Bringer of Pain from Nuclear Blast that was released back in February. Listen, with this band and this album, we've got Priest, Nightwish, and Helvete all rolled into one. It's sort of my version of good symphonic metal. And if you ask me if they took the organ music from their tracking, this may have been the album of the year. The vocals, the incredible guitar playing, and the writing that is incredible makes one kick-ass album.
13.
All right, at unlucky number 13, maybe appropriately so, we come in with GWAR at the Blood of Gods. GWAR is back, and I love this album. You wouldn't know it to look at them, but GWAR is intelligent music. They accomplish with sarcasm what liberal congressmen do by going on Face the Nation. The album is diverse and interesting with very little downtime, if any at all. The new vocalist, Blothar, gets the job done, and his performance comes off as both tribute and replacement for Odious. And then part punk, part thrash, part death metal, part silly, this album is good from cover to cover.
12.
And coming in at number 12 is Unleash the Archers with Apex off Napalm Records, released in June. I truly think Unleash the Archers has come into maturity. They toyed with true power and thrash on Time Stand Still, but listening to this album, this is the Unleash the Archers that I've always wanted. The Matriarch, some of their tracks are just so good, and to hear Brittany Slays just roaring out those vocals like I know she can, I was inspired by this album.
An outstanding effort by Unleash the Archers. If you had the opportunity to go see this band live, who would be so stupid as to pass that up? I would.
You're never going to let me live that. I'm going to see them on this tour. I swear to God, I'm going to her house and listening to them practice if I have to.
11.
Warbeast, Enter the Arena from Housecore Records. Now, this is probably the truest death metal album on my list, although some would label it thrash. And all I know is that it is unapologetically harsh and violent in its delivery. It's got a very limited range of variation in its delivery, but this just goes to highlight my philosophy that once I find something I like, I stick with it. And here's, and just kind of on a special note, we're going to send our prayers and well wishes out to Bruce Corbett, the vocalist, who was diagnosed with esophageal cancer this year and was told he'll never be able to perform again. I think about that. Can you imagine your lifelong passion not being able to pursue it again?
10.
We're getting to the meat of the problem here. Coming in at number 10 is Havok's Confomicide from Century Media. Listen, if you like Havok, you'll like Confomicide. It's a step farther in talent and inventiveness. Listen, the new bassist kicks ass. It's musically technical with a huge variety of thrash riffs. Intention to Deceive is the best video from this album, and you should check it out. I promise you, if you're a thrash fan, you're going to love this album. And by the way, you're going to have to accept that, Gomthog. Thrash is back, like it or not. Havok is one of my favorite bands, and I think this album is a step beyond what they've done every time before.
9.
Let me get to one of the best picks that I have on this list, Obituary, with the self-titled album, Obituary. Fucking Obituary, man. This band does what they do so well. And sometimes exhibiting a little more thrash than I remember from other Obit albums. Obituary is an album that leaves a mark and a strain on your neck muscles, man. And listen, of course my opinion could be biased, as they were hands down the best show I saw last year, and I was obsessed to hear and possess all things Obituary afterwards. And I have to say, this was one of my most anticipated albums of the year, and it didn't disappoint. Let me move on to number 8.
8.
Overkill, the grinding wheel from Nuclear Blast. Now listen, man, here's another 80s thrash band. They started in the 80s, and they're doing what 80s thrash bands do. It's a time-honored algorithm that works for me every freaking time. You won't understand this because it's about band loyalty, and I know that you're not into that. You just throw people away after you're done with them. But this Overkill album is consistent with what they have always done, and what I imagine will continue to be done until they're in wheelchairs and walkers. And they're not far off that now.
Brian, didn't they release this same album in 1988?
They did, man. That's what's great about it.
This is just so dated.
7.
All right, listen, man. Sepultura is my number 7 pick with Machine Messiah from Nuclear Blast. Listen, Sepultura's Machine Messiah was my album on the list that I actually had to grow into liking. When I first heard it, it seemed too, I don't know, kind of experimental is the word that I want to use there. It had a definite prog element here, but it builds on the traditional metal aspect. There are slow melodic songs, and then they hit you with songs like I Am the Enemy. And there are songs which encompass both elements like Aletheia. Not classically Sepultura, but it definitely grew on me, and one of the most memorable albums of the year, one that I grew to love quite a bit.
6.
I want to talk about Mr. Big's Defying Gravity from Frontiers Music, released back in July. Listen, one of your most consistent and biggest criticisms of my music is that it's not real metal. Mr. Big's album, Defying Gravity, has been described as hard rock by many reviewers, and I could see where that comes into play. But Mr. Big is one of the most musically talented bands that started in the late 80s and has endured the test of time with a small but devoted following. I include this on the list, Gomthog, because I love the intricate guitar and bass licks by Paul Gilbert and Billy Sheehan. It takes me back to 80s metal that got me into metal in the first place. Two of the most talented musicians to grace a band, put together new music that captivates and stretches the metal musical mind with fast and at times heavy riffs. Just listen to the title track, Defying Gravity, and you'll see it's why my guilty pleasure of the year. It's amazing freaking metal music.
I have no problem with you liking this album. And if you want to listen to this album, more power to you. It might be the best album of 2017. But this is the definition of album-oriented rock. This is hard rock. This is hard rock like Rod Stewart or the Foo Fighters.
It's nothing like Rod Stewart or the Foo Fighters.
5.
And coming in at number 5 is a time-honored tradition of thrash. Whether it's thrash, re-thrash, I don't give a shit, man. You might have noticed a theme from my list here. I love power. I love thrash. I love bands that have been doing it long enough to perfect the art. And with the release of Slime and Punishment, Municipal Waste has actually accomplished their perhaps most notable lyrics from their arguably most notorious song, The Art of Party. You see, that's what Slime and Punishment is. It's a thrash party. Perhaps the epitome of the album lies in the track Amateur Sketch, which rapid staccato riffs are followed by heart-pounding choruses that will regulate the most atriofibrillating heartbeat. Slime and Punishment is classically Municipal Waste.
4.
The band Doyle, the album Doyle II, As We Die from Monster Man Records, released back in May. You gotta love the music of a man who refuses to record any music that's gonna make him stress over having to play it live. Listen, true to his punk roots of flat-out rebellion against the norms, but laced with metal guitar riffs and double bass beats which allow for good moshing, Doyle, Wolfgang von Frankenstein's second offering, seems to be more refined in metal music. And with songs like Kiss Me As We Die and Blood on the Axe, Alex Story and Doyle have put together the perfect album.
And coming in for the rest of Brian's list, we have the new Black Flag, Minor Threat, and Bad Brains at number 1. And next week, we'll have our exclusive interview with Johnny Rotten here on The Great Punk Debate, because apparently we've changed shows and aren't talking about metal albums anymore.
3.
You know, this is a band that I hadn't known a lot about until this album, but Woe To The Vanquished from Napalm Records, which came out in March, is Warbringer's best offering of their entire career. Listen, the title track starts with the words, "To the victor go the spoils," and Warbringer definitely wins with this one. I started years ago talking about music that grabs you by the balls and pulls you along without a choice. And with songs like Remain Violent, Woe To The Vanquished, it starts dragging from song 1 and doesn't end to the last note of The Guns Fell Silent. And that's exactly how it feels when the music stops, like guns that stop going off. This album is the embodiment of my vision of metal.
2.
I almost put this album coming up as number 1, but my number 2 album is Kreator, Gods of Violence from Nuclear Blast record, released way back in January. Listen. This is quintessential thrash. One of the reasons I love thrash is because it sounds the same over and over. I don't need nostalgia with Kreator and Gods of Violence. It's what they started with, and I have no doubt it's what they're going to end with. It fits all your crap definition of metal and boils up all the elemental emotions that I think don't just define metal. This album is metal. If you can listen to a song like Totalitarian Terror and not headbang, I have no problem saying categorically, you ain't metal, dude. And I think I might have accidentally converted to Satanism while listening to this album.
This is one of your better picks, and I really enjoy Kreator. I got to see them opening for Arch Enemy a couple of years ago. I think this album is an outstanding addition to their catalog.
1.
Here it is, man. My number one album of the year. A Canadian metal band. A band that is power metal at its finest. From Napalm Records is the self-titled album Striker from the band Striker. Oh my God, dude. Actually, this is a little harder album than they put out before. And yet they're maintaining that classic Striker sound. The first time I heard this music, I remember thinking, oh my God, this takes me back to when I was 18 and 19 and headbanging in the church parking lot and doing things I shouldn't be doing at that time. We were romping through the woods. We were loving music and loving life. And it absolutely made me alive again, dude. You hate nostalgia. I embrace it. I welcome it. I love it. This album took me back to a place where I was the best version of me. And I absolutely love Striker's album, Striker.